The night he almost died saving a stranger began like every other night he tried to survive quietly, unnoticed and exhausted. Rain hammered the empty road like fists on a coffin lid, headlights blurred into white ghosts, and one wrong step could have ended everything for him and the little boy waiting at home. In that moment, standing at the edge of a wrecked car with smoke curling into the cold air, a single father made a choice that would rip open his past, test his limits, and reveal a truth about the woman he saved that no one could have imagined. If you believe that kindness still matters in a world that often feels cruel, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for stories that remind us why humanity is worth believing in. Ethan Miller had learned to live on the edge of exhaustion. At 36, his life revolved around alarm clocks, unpaid bills, and the soft breathing of his 6-year-old son, Noah, asleep in the next room. Ever since Noah's mother had died 3 years earlier from a sudden illness, Ethan's world had shrunk into something fragile and tightly controlled. He worked 2 jobs, one during the day repairing heating systems, another at night stocking shelves at a warehouse. Dreams had become luxuries he could not afford. Every decision he made was filtered through one question alone: would this keep Noah safe? That night, Ethan was driving home after his second shift, hands stiff on the steering wheel, eyelids heavy, heart aching with the familiar mix of fatigue and quiet fear. The road was nearly empty, slick with rain, stretching endlessly under flickering streetlights. He was thinking about whether there would be enough money to fix the broken heater before winter deepened when he saw the twisted metal ahead. A car had skidded off the road, slammed into a guardrail, and flipped onto its side. Steam hissed from the hood, and faint sparks lit the darkness. Ethan slowed, instinct screaming at him to keep driving. Noah was alone at home, asleep under the watchful eye of a neighbor who could only stay so long. Every minute mattered. But then he noticed movement inside the wreck. A weak, desperate shift. Someone was alive. Fear and responsibility collided inside him. He pulled over, rain soaking through his jacket as he ran toward the wreckage. The smell of fuel burned his throat. The car was crumpled like paper, windshield shattered, airbags deflated. Inside was a woman, unconscious, blood streaking her forehead, chest barely rising. The car was unstable, one wrong move away from fire or collapse. Ethan had no training in rescue work. His hands shook as he tried to pry open the door, rain mixing with blood and oil. The metal groaned but wouldn't budge. Smoke thickened. Somewhere deep inside him, panic whispered that this was how it ended, that Noah would wake up without a father. But another voice, quieter and stronger, reminded him that someone else's child might be about to lose their mother. He forced the door open just enough to reach inside. As he tried to pull her free, a sudden shift sent sharp pain through his leg. The car lurched, threatening to roll. Ethan felt a burn of fear in his chest but refused to let go. With one final surge of strength, he dragged her out, collapsing onto the wet asphalt just as flames flickered inside the engine. Sirens cut through the storm minutes later, though it felt like hours. Ethan lay on the ground, gasping, legs screaming in pain, rain washing over his face as paramedics rushed in. They took the woman first, loading her into an ambulance, working frantically to stabilize her. Only then did someone notice Ethan, soaked, shaking, barely conscious. At the hospital, Ethan learned his leg was badly injured, torn muscles and a fracture that would keep him off his feet for weeks. As he lay in the sterile room, guilt gnawed at him harder than the pain. He had risked everything. Noah was at home, confused and scared, and Ethan was stuck in a hospital bed with no clear future. The days that followed were heavy and uncertain. Ethan missed work, and missed work meant missed pay. Bills piled up on the small kitchen table like silent accusations. His injury made even simple tasks painful. He tried to stay strong for Noah, smiling through clenched teeth, pretending everything was fine, but the fear crept in at night when the apartment went quiet. The woman he had saved remained unconscious for days. Ethan didn't know her name, her story, or whether she would live. He didn't expect anything from what he had done. He told himself that helping her had been the right thing even if it cost him everything. Still, there were moments when exhaustion and bitterness whispered cruel questions about whether doing the right thing was worth the price. When she finally woke, the hospital staff told her about the man who had pulled her from the wreck. They told her how close she had been to dying, how the car had nearly caught fire, how someone had risked his life without hesitation. She listened in silence, tears sliding down her cheeks, a storm of emotions tearing through her chest. Her name was Claire Whitman, though Ethan wouldn't learn that until later. What no one at the hospital knew was that Claire's life before the accident had been built on control, ambition, and carefully guarded secrets. She was powerful in her own world, used to making decisions that affected hundreds of lives. She had wealth, influence, and a past she rarely let herself remember. And now she owed her life to a man who had nothing to spare. Weeks passed before Claire insisted on meeting him. By then, Ethan had been discharged, moving awkwardly on crutches, trying to rebuild a routine that barely held together. When he arrived at the hospital room, unsure why he had been asked to come, he found himself overwhelmed by her presence. Not because she was intimidating, but because of the raw gratitude etched into her face. Claire didn't thank him with dramatic words or grand gestures that day. She simply looked at him like someone who had been given a second life and finally understood its value. She saw the weariness in his eyes, the careful way he guarded his pain, the quiet dignity of a man who had lost so much and still chosen compassion. Over time, she learned about Noah, about the nights Ethan worked until his body gave out, about the dreams he once had of opening a small repair business before life shattered his plans. Each detail settled into her heart like a weight she refused to ignore. She had spent years believing success meant climbing higher, faster, alone. Lying in a hospital bed, alive only because of a stranger's courage, that belief cracked. Ethan expected the story to end there, a brief meeting, a handshake, and then separate lives. He was wrong. As Claire recovered, changes began quietly. Ethan noticed anonymous envelopes arriving with groceries when his fridge was nearly empty. A repair service fixed his broken heater without charging a cent. A physical therapist appeared, fully covered, helping him heal faster than doctors had predicted. Ethan was suspicious at first, uncomfortable with help he hadn't earned, but slowly he realized these were not handouts. They were acts of gratitude, carefully given, never intrusive. What Ethan didn't know was that Claire had exposed something far greater than generosity through his rescue. During her recovery, she confronted the life she had built, the people she had hurt, the compromises she had made in the pursuit of power. Facing death had stripped away her excuses. The man who saved her life without knowing who she was had shown her the person she could still choose to become. Months later, when Ethan finally returned to work, stronger but forever changed, Claire asked to meet him again, this time not as a patient and rescuer, but as two people connected by a moment that reshaped them both. She revealed who she truly was, not with pride, but with vulnerability. She told him that his selfless act had forced her to look in the mirror and see a stranger she no longer wanted to be. She offered him an opportunity, not as charity, but as partnership. She helped him open the small repair business he had once dreamed of, ensuring it was built honestly, sustainably, and on his terms. Ethan hesitated, pride battling necessity, but ultimately accepted, understanding that refusing would deny both of them the growth they had earned. The business grew slowly, grounded in trust and hard work. Ethan hired people who needed second chances, just as life had given him one. Noah watched his father stand taller, smile more freely, and finally sleep without fear clawing at his chest. For the first time since his wife's death, Ethan felt hope that wasn't fragile. Claire didn't disappear into the background of his success. She changed, too. She stepped away from the ruthless world she once dominated, choosing instead to invest in causes that supported families like Ethan's, people whose struggles were invisible until it was almost too late. The accident had not just exposed who she really was, but who she wanted to become. Just before the ending, take a moment to comment below and share what part of this story moved you the most. Your words might inspire someone who's quietly struggling right now. Years later, Ethan would sometimes drive past that stretch of road, the memory of rain and fire still vivid. He knew how close he had come to losing everything. He also knew that in risking his life for a stranger, he had unknowingly saved his own, not because of money or opportunity, but because he had proven to himself and his son that kindness was not weakness, and courage did not require certainty. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that one brave choice can change countless lives, please like the video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, stories that remind us that even in the darkest moments, humanity can still shine.